Hey guys, this is Miss Young, and we're going to be taking notes over our final president of Bundle 4, and that is President James Monroe. Let's think back to our acronym. We all jump for Mad Money. James Monroe is our money, okay, because that's Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. Some good things coming up during this presidency that we've kind of discussed. But let's go ahead and get started. All right, for starters, right out the bat, at the beginning of his presidency, we have what is called the era of good feeling, because we feel fantastic for defeating Britain once again. You kind of have to think of it like at the end of a game. Let's say you have a basketball game. It's one of the hardest teams that are in the district, and you beat them, and you just walk away feeling like, man, yes, this feels great. You have a sense of pride. Another term you need to know during this era of good feeling is called nationalism. It is a newfound pride to be an American, really starting to come together as a country. You're starting to feel like this government thing that we're now under is gonna function. It's working. We feel unified, and again, we have pride to be an American. That's nationalism. And finally, under era of good feeling, our economy is growing because we had to rely on U.S. manufacturing during the war. Think back to under Madison, when we had the cotton gin invented, which kind of spurred on the need for more slaves. But with the cotton gin and all of that does come economic growth, because that means that we are now manufacturing our own goods. To manufacture means it's being made in a factory, and we are going to get more into that later. Go ahead and finish writing that and move on when you're done. All right, so our next topic under James Monroe is Clay's American System. This is going to sound similar to Hamilton's plan that we learned about under George Washington's presidency. However, it's got a slight difference. This was created by a man named Henry Clay. You may recall that name from him being one of the war hawks during the War of 1812, one of the congressmen who really pushed us to go ahead and go to war. Henry Clay said that we needed a strong banking system. We needed to go ahead and have protective tariffs, which we'd already implemented. But then he also added that we needed a network of canals and roads, specifically the Erie Canal. Now, the Erie Canal was extremely beneficial in connecting a river to a large body of water. It's kind of like a man-made river. Other canals that have been built since tend to have different transition stages for the boat to be able to adjust the level of water and so on, but not necessary to know about for the Erie Canal. So here is a painting of the Erie Canal. Here we have an actual photograph, and you can see that the boats are being pulled by donkeys and horses. So just to give you a good idea of what we're dealing with regards to the location, so you have the Hudson River, which is right along this area, and the Erie Canal connected the Hudson across New York to this spot on the Erie, on Lake Erie, which is one of our Great Lakes. So this is New York. Okay, and so the Erie Canal runs through New York. Here's another picture, kind of a close-up. Okay, so from the Hudson River to Lake Erie. All right, the other thing you need to know about under Clay's American System is he felt like it was necessary to make sure that we maintain the free enterprise system. The free enterprise system is just an economic system, and if you think about what economy means, it means something to do with the flow of money. And how does it work? Well, in the free enterprise system, businesses are free to choose what they trade, who they trade with, what are their prices going to be. They get to own their own land without government interference. That's the point. The government does not get involved. It is free for the business owner to choose. Now, every once in a while, nowadays, the government does get involved. It's kind of like when you go to buy permanent markers or spray paint. You can't buy it because you're not 18 yet. Okay, those are times where the government does get involved. Anytime that it may be beneficial to the safety of society does government typically step in. But at this point, there was very little government interference. And again, business owners are free to choose. It's the free enterprise system. So wrap up what you got to write. Pause if you need to. Move on when you're ready. All right, our next topic is going to be the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine is a document that was written under Monroe's presidency. And here's what it said. It prevents any European nation from colonizing in the Western Hemisphere. Okay? It's basically saying to the rest of the world, hands off. Do not touch the Western Hemisphere, because other countries were continuing to come in and colonize in South America, in the Caribbean, and we felt like we were kind of the world power and protector of Latin America. And we also, during the Monroe Doctrine, proclaimed to stay neutral in European wars. Again, where have we heard this before? If you go back to Washington's presidency, we talked about it under with the Proclamation of Neutrality. Under Jefferson, it was the Embargo Act, where we refused to be involved with anything going on in Europe, including trade. And here we are again with the Monroe Doctrine. We are proclaiming to stay neutral in European wars. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you're going to see this type of question on the test. It's going to want to know, what do these three documents have in common? And the three documents, Proclamation of Neutrality, Embargo Act, and the Monroe Doctrine, all discuss staying neutral during European affairs. So here's another political cartoon regards to the Monroe Doctrine. Here is another one that you need to become familiar with. This was on a STAR test a few years ago. So you can see that here we are, North America, okay, that's the United States. We've got our stop sign. We kind of draw on the line in the sand, letting these guys know, yeah, don't bother coming over here because we're going to take care of you. And so you can see the little bubble here from Europe being like, what do you mean by off limits? Okay, so they're trying to find the loophole. So that's the political cartoon, kind of the comedy behind it. It's a funny way of talking about a serious subject. So write what you have left. Move on when you're ready. All right, next, Florida Cession. The Florida Cession is when we acquire Florida into the United States. Occurred in 1819. Okay, we bought it from Spain for $5 million. We agreed to pay off Spain's debt, and this all took place under the Adam-Onis Treaty. Okay, so now you can kind of see that we now consist of all of this. Quite a bit now. We're really starting to grow, and this is still just the beginning of our acquisitions. Acquisition means to acquire, to take on, to make it yours. Okay, so write down everything you see here. Move on when you're ready. All right, our next topic is the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Compromise is something that we have discussed before. It's kind of, remember, it's one of those agreements where each side gives a little and takes a little. In this instance, this is where slavery is forbidden in the Louisiana Territory north of this Missouri Compromise line. Now, the Missouri Compromise line is right here, this dotted line, 36 degrees 30. This is what we call the Missouri Compromise line. Everything in the Louisiana Territory, okay, so if we mark out the Louisiana Territory, okay, right here, here's your Louisiana. Okay, so there's Louisiana. So everything north of this line is going to be have slavery forbidden. However, it gets a little tricky. At this point, Missouri is added as a slave state. You're thinking, wait a minute, where's Missouri? All right, here's Missouri. That's above the line, right? Well, yeah, so apparently everything above the line except for Missouri is going to be free because Missouri is a slave state. Now, this was unsettling because notice on your map how many slave states you got. And then notice how many free states you have, meaning states that do not allow slavery. Well, when you add a Missouri, you now all of a sudden have an imbalance. You have more slave states than you do free states. And you think about what happens in Congress. Each state has so many representatives, right? Well, when Congress goes to make decisions, if you are lopsided on free states to slave states, Congress is going to start making decisions based on the needs and desires of their states. And that means more decisions will win with the slave states. And this bothered people. And in order to maintain a balance in the slave to free state ratio, they added Maine, which is in the far upper northeast corner of the United States. So the two states that are added during the Missouri Compromise of 1820 is Missouri and Maine, so that you could keep a balance of the slave to free state ratio. Because everything above that line was supposed to be free except Missouri. Then it became unbalanced, so they added Maine. Now we're balanced. Write everything you see. Move on when you're ready. All right, so here we are with another court case. This is going to be Gibbons versus Ogden. And the issue here with Gibbons versus Ogden is you have two steamboat operators. Ogden, he goes and gets himself a license to operate his steamboat on the Hudson River to ship goods, transport people, and monopolize it. Monopolize means he's the only one, nobody else gets to do this. So he's going to be the one that makes all the money. He can charge what he wants. Remember that free enterprise system? Okay, he charges what he wants, and he can because people need to use the river, so he's the only guy. So Ogden goes and gets his license to do so from New York. Okay, so this is Ogden, the big O, Ogden. Gibbons, however, Gibbons goes and he's like, you know what, forget you, I'm going to go get this from the federal government. Gibbons goes to the federal government and gets the same license and starts to operate on the Hudson River. Oh, this just makes Ogden furious. He's like, this is not right. I got my license. I got it first. Gibbons, get off my river. So Ogden takes Gibbons to court. The decision at court is only the federal government has power to regulate interstate trade. So let's take a look at these words really quick. Regulate means to step in and help maintain what goes on. Okay, so now, yeah, we have a free enterprise system, but the government's starting to step in and regulate a little bit to kind of get their hands in it. Regulate, and then interstate, meaning in between states, and the trade. So the government, the federal government, has the power to regulate interstate trade. So if Gibbons had the federal government license and Ogden had the state level license, and the federal government has the power to regulate interstate trade, Gibbons wins. Gibbons is the guy who gets to have the license to run across the Hudson River. So the significance here is that federal government power is reinforced. The state power didn't win this one. Federal government was the one that ended up proving that, no, federal government has this power, sorry. So that is your significance. So here's another illustration of the Gibbons versus Ogden court case. Move on when you're ready. All right, our next court case is McCullough v. Maryland. So, the issue in McCullough v. Maryland, first of all, McCullough is a guy, Maryland is the state. All right, so the issue here is the state of Maryland wanted to tax its branch of the national government that was, national bank that was built in the state of Maryland. States collect taxes. The national bank was in the state. They wanted to tax it. And McCullough, who was the banker there, said, no, I'm not paying your taxes. I'm not paying taxes to you. I'm a national federal building. You have no power over this building. So Maryland gets mad and they sue. All right. So the decision, when it goes to court, states cannot claim to have power over the federal government. Thinking back to federalism, federalism is where, yes, there is a balance and a relationship between state and national power, but federal or national power is supreme law. It is top dog. So here's your significance. The federal government is upheld as a supreme law of the land, and it emphasized the principle of federalism. Pause if you need to, move on when you're ready. All right, and we're done. You're going to be gluing your notes along the spiral edge because there is a front and a back, and you don't want to glue the back all the way down and not have what you need. So you'll glue James Monroe's face upside, right side up. Put a little bit of glue along that spiral edge so you can still see the front and the back of these notes.